Last week we did CMAs, and you've got your book here, right?
Just
So,
got my book.
all right, awesome. So last week we did CMAs, and I think everybody um, pretty much figured it out or got and understands it, right, Tegan?
No, I'm still trying to figure out how to do them.
Are you?
No, I think I did
So,
5 this week, so I'm pretty well
I
okay.
think you're good at it. Yeah, yeah. And Savannah, you got questions on them?
Well, I wasn't here last week for the CMA.
You're
I
not
do,
in the office?
huh?
Not
Yeah,
in
I
the
don't
office?
feel good. I think there's something going around the team's office. Shauna's out as well, and Jeremy.
Oh, I'll tell them to stay away from me. I don't want to talk about
That's why I stayed home because I didn't want to get anybody else sick. But um, so no, I haven't done one yet, and I wasn't here for last week's, but I do have a seller consult and appointment on Friday. So I'm actually going to be selling. You remember Stephanie?
it. Yeah,
I'm going to be selling her house. She,
really. She
yeah,
moving?
no, she wants to downsize because her husband works in the oil fields and she wants to be with him more often because he goes to North Dakota every 2 weeks. So they have like a little RV. So she wants to just be with him and they don't want to have that mortgage payment.
Okay. All right. Well, good. So when are you doing that? Friday, you said?
Yep.
So how do you want to do that? Do you want to go and look at the house first and then do a CMA?
Yeah, so Shauna's going to be tagging along with me for basically this whole entire process since it's the first time that I'm doing it.
Okay.
So, yeah, on Friday, we're really just going to look at the house and see if they need to fix anything or just decide any of that stuff on Friday. And then after Friday, we'll figure out what we're going to be doing.
Okay. Okay. So I'm gonna let Shauna just kind of teach you the way she does CMAs. And
Yeah.
then I would like to see the CMA after you got it done
Okay.
and kind of curious on how Shauna teaches people how to do it. Um, I don't know if she uses Toolkit or what program she uses to do it.
Yeah.
So,
Not sure, but I'll definitely show it to you after we get it done.
okay, sounds good. Um, Dan, you're kind of in the middle
Okay.
of our cycle here. So if you're lost, we can talk later.
Okay. Okay.
Here. How we start everything. Go ahead, Tegan. Were you gonna say something?
Yeah, if you want to go over the first step and kind of like a quick step on the second one, I'm totally fine. Like I said, I know how to do it. So if you want to bring them both up to speed, go for it.
For CMA?
Yeah.
I the way I start it, it's where you find the information and all that. I think I'm just gonna go on to listing agreement if nobody has questions, and then they can catch up next time around.
Yeah, that's fine with me.
Okay. Tegan, did you attend Sean's Wyoming class on the new forms?
Yeah, I did last Tuesday.
Okay. I did it yesterday. Um, and I don't actively sell. My license is inactive, my Wyoming license, but boy, they changed a lot of stuff, and it just Wyoming is such a different animal.
Yeah, they changed a lot. I think majority of it was necessary changes. Not everything in there is what I thought should have been changed. But I think it's fine. I think there's going to be a little adjustment period because Wyoming brokers kind of suck, in all honesty. So I think it's going to be a huge learning period for probably about 6, 7 months.
Yeah, yeah. Well, if I ever get active again, I will, you might be my go-to guy, if I got questions
Sounds
for,
good.
for
Hopefully
forms.
by then I can answer them.
Oh, I'm sure you can. I'm sure you can. All right. So what we're gonna do, if we don't have any, more things on CMAs, and Savannah will get caught up, with Shauna. Dan will get, caught up next time around
Okay,
on CMAs. We do this every Wednesday at 1 o'clock.
okay,
So, so what we're gonna do is, listing agreements. And Tegan, you're not licensed in South Dakota, are you?
No.
Okay. So I only go over the listing agreements in South Dakota. You're more than welcome to stay, but again, if you find this unnecessary and you got something to do, you can sure jump off. Doesn't matter to me.
Yeah, I might jump off.
Okay, all right. You can hang for a little bit, or just, you don't have to tell me, you can just leave if you want, so. There you go, see you later, all righty. And I hear them, I hear you would.
Didn't know that he wasn't licensed in South Dakota. I don't know why I thought that he was.
Yeah,
Doesn't he live in South, does he live in South Dakota?
he lives in Newcastle,
Oh,
which is in Wyoming. So go to your CMA documents page. And then the next page after that one there. Okay. So once we do a CMA, and once we get a client to say, yep, I want to list with you, we're going to go over the listing paperwork, right? And the very first thing, remember, Savannah, the very first thing that we have either a buyer or a seller sign is the real estate relationship disclosure. Okay? Have you done anything in Colorado?
no,
You haven't, okay. Because I'm sure Colorado's different, Wyoming's different. Colorado, there was a Colorado lady in the class yesterday. And every state's different. Colorado's got, what, 16-page purchase agreement or something crazy like that.
there's more.
It's nuts. So the first thing that we want to go over with our client, whether it's a buyer or a seller, in this case it's the seller, is the real estate relationship disclosure. And Savannah, what does the real estate relationship disclosure do? Why do we need it?
so basically to our clients, it kind of explains to them what type of agencies that we possibly can run into when working with them. So like there's the single agent, you explain that to them, you tell them that you'll be just working with them, solely them, and you can negotiate for them, basically do anything. And then you have the appointed agency, which is basically when you're just working with another Keller Williams agent on the other side. So it's the same thing as single agency. And then limited agency is when you're on the other side is either your broker or somebody on your team if you're on a team. And that's
Or
when it gets kind of
yourself.
or yourself, yeah. And that's when it gets kind of tricky just because there's limitations to what you can and cannot say to them.
Very good. Very good. You've sat in this class long enough, and I've asked you enough that you understand it. Very good. So Dan, just exactly what she said. There are 3 ways in this office that we can represent a client. That's why the first 3, single, appointed, and limited, are there. And then there's a line and there's transaction brokerage. We won't talk about that now. But when I sit down with my client, I say there are three ways that you are represented. That I can represent you at Keller Williams. Single agent, appointed agent, limited agent. Single agent is exactly what Savannah said. We can do really whatever. I can tell you what to offer. I can tell you any detail I know about the client. If I know something about the other side, I can tell you everything. Anything I find, I tell you. The other two, appointed agent and limited agent, refer to an in-house Keller Williams property that we're dealing with. Okay, in this case, we're talking listings now. Remember, we're working with the seller.
Right.
So if we run into an appointed agency situation, that buyer would be another Keller Williams agent that is representing them. And I can treat them just like a single agent. So me, I'm the broker. So I am a limited agent with everybody. So if you bring a buyer to one of my listings, you and I are in limited agency. If you bring a buyer to one of Savannah's listings, now you're appointed agent. And it's just another Keller Williams agent on the other side. But you can treat it as a single agency situation. Because if Savannah gives you some information about her property or the situation of her clients, let's say her clients are getting a divorce and it's a court order to sell the property. And if Savannah tells you that, then you use that to the advantage of your client. Okay? Because she should know better than to say that to
Right,
me.
right.
If I would tell you that, you can't use it because you and I are in limited agency.
Okay.
And Savannah, do you know why I am limited agency with everybody in the office?
Well, one, because you're a broker, but two, like we go to you with like any questions that we have about any of our listings or any problems. And so you know a lot about what's going on with our listings or our buyers, and you see all of our paperwork.
Yep, very good. So that is why I am limited agent, because I'm going to sign your paperwork. I'm going to sign your listing. So when you get a listing, you're going to send it to me from the broker signature. So there's three brokers in our office: me, Tim Hoffman, Dave Kaler. And all three of us can sign. Generally, I do most of the signing. Tim does probably the second most, and Dave doesn't do much at all when it comes to signing. He actually, David does all the Wyoming signing because he's the responsible broker in Wyoming. So he'll deal with all that. I don't. I don't deal with Wyoming too much, which is good because it's a whole thing, whole different thing. So that's your limited agency. Savannah also mentioned in limited agency that it's yourself. So it's your broker, your team, if you're on a team, and yourself. So if Savannah had a buyer and she also had a listing and that buyer wanted to look at her listing and just look at her listing, she is in limited agency, so she can't answer questions like, if I'm Savannah, just pretend I'm not an agent. If I'm Savannah's buyer and I'm walking through her listing with her, and I'm going to say, "Hey, Savannah, I really like this place. What do you think I could get it for?"
And then basically I would say I can't really tell you what to offer, but I can tell you like the prices around this neighborhood and kind of give you an idea of what would be a good thing for you to offer, but you have to put that idea together yourself.
Okay, okay, I understand. Got it. And why is that? How come you can't help me?
Just because I'm also representing the seller, and so if I know that the seller's like there's something about the seller, then I can't like really say anything. So I just don't want to damage either party in any part of the negotiation part.
Okay, okay. So you don't want to reveal if that seller's revealed to you what they would take,
Correct.
you can't tell me because it would hurt their negotiations.
Yes.
Understood, understood. So what happens if we, if I want to offer less than I'm approved for? I mean, can you say something to them?
No. So that's why it's good for me to not be able to say anything about anything because I would know what you're approved for, but I wouldn't be able to tell the sellers like, oh, they can take up to this amount because that's what they got approved for.
Okay, so you protect me as well then in this
Yes.
situation. Okay, all right. You understand that?
Yeah, I'm just wondering, like, how is that really much different than a transaction broker? Because,
Okay, transaction broker, you're not representing either side.
okay, no, that makes sense. There
Yep.
we go.
So that's why there's kind of a line there.
Okay, okay,
Transaction broker is where, example, let's say your neighbor. Let's say you have a neighbor. And the neighbor wants to sell his house. And the neighbor has a friend whose sister's looking for a house. And the friend would love that sister to come look at this house. And
you just
And
kind
buy
of
it.
facilitate.
and you facilitate. So the sister talked to the friend and said, I'm gonna offer you 300,000. The guy says, great, let's take it. Now what do we do?
No, we just want, so,
Well, hey, I know this guy, he's a real estate agent, maybe he can help us. And he's gonna talk to you and he's gonna say, hey, my friend's sister wants to buy my house. We've already kind of got the details worked out, the price and all that kind of stuff. We just don't know what to do next. Can you help us? And so, do you know anything about this, Savannah?
For transaction broker,
So we get to that point, so the
it's
homeowner and the buyer come together and they already know what they're gonna do. What are you gonna do as the real estate agent?
so aren't you basically doing like the paperwork and stuff like that for them?
Yep,
And
yep.
that's it. Like you're not going to be telling them or negotiating for them at all. It's just
Cor-
them doing basically everything besides the paperwork and getting them.
Yep, that's 100% correct. So, the best way to do a transaction situation, broker situation for me is I'm gonna say, get both parties, sit them down at the table, pull up your contract on your computer, sit in the conference room, pull it up, and start filling it in. All right, Mr. Buyer, what were you gonna offer?
okay,
That kind
yeah,
of a thing.
yeah,
You get to the point where it talks about home inspections. Now you're doing a home inspection? Well, I don't know. What do you think? You think I should do a home inspection? And then you're gonna say, you know what? I'm just a transaction broker. You guys need to discuss this amongst yourselves. So, okay, well, what are my options? Your options are you can hire a independent home inspector if you choose, and that's about as far as you can go. Well, do you know any? We can give you a list. If you don't know anybody, I can help you with that, but you've got to contact them, you've got to set it up. You gotta do the whole thing, okay?
So, is there any circumstance where, say, you do sign transaction broker with someone, and then towards like you're starting to get to that paperwork and they keep on asking you questions and they're like, well, why don't we just sign agency so that you can
Yep,
do everything for me, basically? Has there
yep,
been scenarios where that's happened where you've transitioned from, okay, I'm just being their transaction broker to actually being their agent?
yes, yes. That's a really, really good question. So that kind of goes back to my point here. All four of these boxes are checked. And they're always going to be checked. Because we offer all four services, right? And depending on what we're doing, it's gonna change. We could go out on a buyer appointment and we've got 3 houses to look at. One's your listing that you're showing your buyer.
Okay, yeah,
So you're gonna be the limited agent. One is Savannah's listing. Now you're gonna be appointed agent. And then one is a Remax listing and you're a single agent,
okay,
you know, and it just
Yeah.
kind of flows, right?
yeah,
Fluid.
yeah.
Every once in a while, the transaction brokerage thing would come into play. So I think it would be a little awkward if buyer and seller are sitting at the table and one of them asks you to represent them. That would be a little awkward. So hopefully,
It's
if
just-
that happens, it happens before we
Yeah.
set them down.
Yeah,
You know, so if your home seller starts asking you questions, you know, he asks you to do this and you guys are it's just you and the seller. And he's asking you all these questions. Well, do you think I'm doing this? Do you think I'm doing this right? What about this? You can say, hey, I don't represent you on this. Now, if you want me to represent you, I can sign a one-time listing. And, you know, I do it for X percent, you know, you can name your price. But I can do that for you. And you can do it lower, you know, than your normal 3% because you're not marketing the property. You're not doing anything like that. So you could do it for less. And then I represent you, Mr. Seller. I don't that now we can go ahead and still do the deal with this guy's sister. I don't represent her, I represent you.
so, but it might be a little bit sticky, I'm guessing, just because would you have to, like, to a certain extent, end up kind of going limited? Because if you started telling me stuff before I became this person's that they weren't privy to, is there like a cutoff point there, if that makes sense? Like, you told me in private, yeah, I just want a transaction, I'm going through a divorce, whatever. And then this other, when we're all sitting together, this person pops the question and, you know what I mean? Am I,
Oh,
like,
yeah,
all of a
yeah,
sudden
yeah,
limited now?
gotcha. So if I ended up representing the buyer,
Yeah,
yes,
okay,
yes, that is a little sticky. That's why you gotta really watch out. Hopefully you didn't have a conversation with that buyer before. Or the seller.
And you're
if
finding out
if it's
just-
the other
yeah.
one, yeah. Those are situations that you've gotta really be careful about. And that is why transaction brokerage is very, it is sticky. It can get sticky. And a lot of times, the reason it gets sticky is because a lot of times you know one party better than the other party.
Yeah, yeah, okay.
I mean, I had a situation one time where, I don't want to say he was a great friend of mine, but we were in a homebrew club together, so I knew him. I knew him pretty well. He just asked me, he said, hey, I want to sell my mom's house. You know, his mom passed away. He goes, I want to sell my mom's house. He goes, can you come over and do a market analysis? So I said, sure. So I met him over at the house, did a market analysis. We actually had paperwork started to list the house. And he called me and said, hey, my sister decided that she wants to buy the house. And I go, oh, and I already did a CMA.
Yeah.
We're getting ready to sign listing, and we didn't sign the listing agreement, but I had it ready. And so I said, oh, okay. And he goes, she wants to buy it cash, and gave me all the details. And I said, well, yeah, we can definitely do it. And it was a little weird because I was kind of already representing him. I already kind of went through the motion
Yeah.
with him. And I thought, well, it's his sister. That'll be okay. It's not like she's going to be a big pain in the ass or anything. And she was a big pain in the ass. And it was tough. And her husband got involved, and it just got real. I mean, we got it done, and nobody sued anybody, but I definitely didn't make enough money on that deal to go through all the headaches. So back to the real estate relationship disclosure. If you notice, there's two signature sections. The first one is in the colored box, and that one's the acknowledgement. So that's the client acknowledging the fact that you explained these 4 scenarios to them. Savannah, what happens if they don't want your representation?
So then they'll sign the below one, right?
They'll
just-
sign below. So what it says, when you choose not to have an agency relationship with a firm or its agent, and they will sign twice. Okay, so if you are working with for sale by owner, so let's say that you're working with a buyer, and the buyer wants to look at a for sale by owner property. You're going to call that for sale by owner property. You're going to call that owner. You're going to set up a time. You're going to say, hey, I have a buyer that would like to look at your house. Ask them if they're willing to pay a buyer agent fee, number 1. And number 2, you're going to tell them, I have to have you sign my real estate relationship disclosure twice because you don't want my representation. And you'll explain, a very quick, there's 3 ways you can be represented at Keller Williams: single agency, limited agency, appointed agency. And you'll explain it very quickly to them. You don't want my representation. We've already made that establishment. So I'm going to have you sign this twice. That's the law.
So, but like, let's say if it's like a husband, wife that's doing for sale by owner, do you just need 1 signature for each?
I wouldn't get too, if the husband's there, I wouldn't get too hung up. I
Okay.
just get 1 signature. If she's there, get 2. If not, you have to get it again. Now I'm really might get in trouble by saying this. I mean, if you showed the property, you got him to sign it, let's say, your client didn't like it, we're not going to go any further. I wouldn't hunt down the wife for her signature. But if you wrote an offer on the property and you're getting things, you'll have to get her signature eventually.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's very easy to do because she's got to sign the purchase agreement. So you just have her sign it at that point.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yep. So, okay, any questions on, it's kind of good that we did this because now it explained the agency situation. So do you kind of understand agency the way Colorado? What do they?
Yeah. I'm trying to erase all that because it doesn't.
Yeah, it's not going to apply here, right?
Yeah, in some ways, all it did was kind of make things, where I
Little
kind
muddy.
of it. Yeah, exactly. I thought it'd be easier. In a lot of ways, it was, but there's subtle differences that are important.
So they probably call it dual agency.
Yeah, and there's no dual agency there, so
Oh, really?
Yeah,
So you cannot represent both sides?
no,
And I'm just asking this for the heck of it. So if you were in a Keller Williams there?
but I didn't literally, it was just, I was already in the process of moving up here. And it was
So
like,
you didn't really do anything.
I thought it was, yeah, I thought it was like completely transferable. And then I got like, no, you still have to do the South Dakota part and you can only do it if you act. So like literally they just activated it and now I'm here. So,
So if you were in a Colorado firm
yeah,
and you have a listing and one of your other fellow agents that you don't really have anything to do with, you're not on a team or they're not your broker or anything like that,
right.
they have a buyer for your listing, you can't do that?
It just, I just remember for test purposes, no dual agency in Colorado. So I'm not exactly sure, but I'm sure there has to be a way around it.
I think
Just
there would
don't
have
know.
to be a way
Yeah.
around that,
Yeah,
because it's probably not dual agency, it's more like appointed agency.
I think that's exactly like what the broker was, both people is appointing and.
Yeah, okay.
Okay,
All right, just curious. Curious about that. All right, so you understand that, right? And Savannah, you did a very good job of explaining it.
yes, and thank you for the little word dance there.
Very
I can
good.
show you, similarly priced homes and all that, so.
So next page is the listing agreement. So what we're gonna do now is we are signing the paperwork to list your client's property for sale. So when Savannah has her listing here in a week or so, she's gonna have her client sign this paperwork, right? You're gonna fill out the property address. Do you have this in front of you, Savannah?
The what?
Do you have the contract in front of you?
Yeah.
Okay. So property address, then your client's name. Where would you check to make sure that the house is owned by the people that are signing this?
The county?
There you go. So if we're in Pennington County, if the house that you're selling is in Pennington County, you go on the Pennington County site and you can do a property search and make sure that the house that you're selling is actually owned by the people that are asking you to sell it.
Sounds like common sense, but I'm gonna write that down.
Yeah, you would think. And you would think, why would somebody be selling a house that they don't own? I mean, that's the common sense part of it.
Right?
But they do. People do that. And I have run into it. And I've never had anybody yet. I have yet to have anybody sell a property that they weren't a part of.
What would you even do in that scenario? Like, what would you have to like not call the police, but I feel like you would have to like do something and be like, listen, this person's trying to sell a house that they don't even own. Like, I don't know, that
Yeah.
almost seems
So I
illegal.
had it one time. Where I got a guy that said, hey, he didn't even explain the situation. Normally you would think somebody would say, hey, I need to sell my parents' house.
Yeah,
I'm the executor and I need to sell my parents' house. They both passed away or they're both in assisted living or whatever. But this guy just called up and he said, yeah, I need to sell my house. So I looked it up and it was not even,
yes.
he wasn't a part of the owner of the house. So I had to call him back and I said, so I don't see your name on this. And he goes, oh, well, it's my parents' house. Now the last names were right,
Yeah,
but he didn't have authorization to do it. Now, I asked him, I said, well, we're gonna need, if you're the executor, we're gonna need the papers for that because they're gonna need it at closing, and I'm gonna need it to actually list the house. So whether it's a copy or what, it's something that's signed by the attorney. So, and he got it. He didn't pitch a complaint about it, you know. Now, if he goes, well, if they start doing that kind of stuff, maybe it's time to dig a little deeper and not list it. Or, so you don't probably call the police, but I would dig in a little deeper and find out. I also had one one time where I had the listing and I already listed the house. With the and you know what? He was selling it for his mother too, if I remember. But I knew the guy because he just lived down the street from me.
Mhm.
He went to my church. So I knew the guy. So I knew that we were cool. But it was vacant. And I had somebody, a buyer, or somebody that wasn't a realtor or anything, call me and she said, hey, I've got I have something here on, and it wasn't Zillow, it was Craigslist, that says that this house is for rent. And I go, no, it's for sale. And she goes, well, I kind of thought so. But it was listed on Craigslist for rent. And the guy lived in Nebraska that was the owner. And it was a total scam.
Wow.
And he wanted, and he was deaf. That was what he said. He was deaf, so he couldn't take phone calls. So everything's got to either be text or email.
Mhm.
And here's the situation. Before you get the keys, I need a deposit, all this kind of stuff,
Yeah.
And if she sends the deposit, guess what? She doesn't get any keys, right?
Yeah.
And then he's gone. So those kind of things are things you got to watch out for, right?
That sounds like Craigslist.
And WhatsApp. I feel like so I had to ask Anna and Lonnie because you have that contact form on your website. And well, I got one and it wasn't from a in-state one. And I was like, I mean, you never know because obviously people can want to be moving to South Dakota out of state. So I called them. Well, then they said, contact me on WhatsApp. And I'm like, no. So then I asked Lonnie and she was like, yeah, that's like a repetitive scam that we keep on seeing all the time is the WhatsApp thing if they're trying to contact you through specifically that app.
Yeah. Yep. And I actually asked AI about that. I actually paste the actual note that they wrote me, and it's got all those weird symbols sometimes. And if they paste and copy and paste, that's what AI said. They said generally these are scams. And they said, here's what you could do though. You could email it. And usually if you ask specific questions,
They'll just move on.
they'll move on. They won't answer. And
Still just like a waste and just
yeah. And you hate to, if you lost one time to do that. But you can email them. They say it's pretty safe to email them. Probably don't talk to them, don't text them. Don't call on WhatsApp, but you could email them. And usually they go away because they're not legit. Right. All right. So responsible broker and firm, that'll just have my name on it, Keller Williams, Black Hills. Start date is going to be the date that you are signing the contract. If you are not putting it on the market right away, you would say it in other provisions, going on market this date. That's how I do it. Because you want them to sign. And then the expiration date, get as long as you can. I usually do 4 to 6 months, depending on what I can get. I try for 6. If they complain, I'll do it for 4. But usually, I usually don't get much pushback anymore, so. Creation of agency. We're always gonna check exclusive in the little box there. And then again, it just goes through single agency, appointed agency, limited agency, kind of like what we just went through with the real estate relationship disclosure. In here, you are going to, well, that's, you're gonna put your name. So under appointed agency, it says broker appoints. So you're gonna put your name, right? If you're a team, you're gonna put the name of your team, or each member of your team needs to be in there. If you're a part of a large team like Savannah is, it's gonna put Kaler team in there and then see addendum. And the Kaler team has an addendum with everybody's name listed and everybody has signed it. And that it's attached to the listing agreement. Second page. Second page, they're gonna finish up with limited agency. Line 64. This is where you're gonna have your client initial. And preferably in the yes box, and they're going to agree to appointed agency and they're gonna agree to limited agency. In the yes box. In mine, I don't know if you, okay, mine has an NA in appointed agency because I don't do appointed agents. The only thing I can do is limited. And single if I'm out of, it's another agency. What happens, Savannah? And I'm picking on you, but what happens if your client says, well, I don't want to do limited agency or appointed agency?
Then I would tell them that then I can't show them any of the Keller Williams properties. I can't show them my broker's properties, and I can't show them my properties if I have any listed. And so that will take a good portion of the properties on the market down,
Very good.
what they can see.
Very good. That's how you do it. So you say, well, that's just fine. We can definitely, not do appointed or limited, but we hold about 25% of all the listed properties on the market. And, we have over 100 agents. In this case, if they don't want to do limited or appointed, that means no other Keller Williams agent can show your property. And we don't want that because we have 100+ agents in the area. I have never had anybody not agree, ever.
I can see that.
Okay. Line 71, legal description. We're in the box there. We're going to write the legal description. The reason that box is so big is because there are, your properties in towns are pretty easy. Lot 1, block 5 of Sun Valley subdivision. Oh, that's pretty easy. But if you get out of town and you're doing, maybe a bigger property, you've got a lot of quarter, half, the half of the quarter of the eighth of this, and it gets pretty long. So that's why they give you a lot of room on there. And then you're going to put the county, state, also known as, that's your physical address. So 123 Main Street. or whatever the address of the property is. Property is listed for sale or lease. So you're going to check what you're doing. If you're leasing the property, which I don't do, I sell them, that's it. So I always have sale marked. And that's what you're gonna do probably 99% of the time.
And your legal description, or you just get that information from the county website?
Yep.
then?
Get that from the county website.
Okay.
Line 86 is the terms. So for the sum of, what are you listing the property for? 450,000. On the following terms, cash or new loan. That means what terms is the seller willing to accept? Well, they're willing to accept cash, right? They're willing to accept a new mortgage or a new loan. If they're willing to do a contract for deed, you add that in there. You know, those kind of terms. Most of the time, it's gonna be cash or new loan. Because in order to do a contract for deed, the people have to pretty much own it outright. Can't have another mortgage on it. Okay. And then lease terms, we don't talk about that. Next page, page 102, or line 102, I'm sorry. Broker commissions are not set by law or fully negotiable. So when you did your Colorado classes, they probably talked about the brand new lawsuit that happened last year, and they probably talked about the new laws, or they did.
No.
They didn't. Okay. Are you not familiar with the lawsuit that happened
No.
last year? Really? Okay. Well, I'm not gonna get into it.
Okay,
Cause it's a pain in the butt.
just Google it.
But yeah, I would Google it. Bottom line is, we have to, if you're gonna show property, you have to get them to sign buyer agency. And
Oh,
state
yeah,
commission.
no.
You cannot show property without that anymore. All commissions are not set by law or fully negotiable. That's why this isn't big bold letters, because it's fully negotiable. And then what I do is I tell them, I said, generally, I usually list for 3%. That's my portion of it. Okay, Mr. Seller, I usually ask for 3% from you. You can choose to pay a buyer agent if you like. The buyer is going to be signing a buyer agency or a broker agreement with their client. Customarily, before the laws changed, the seller would get a contract with me, and we would list it for 6%, 5%, 6%, 7%, whatever we'd agreed upon. That's what we would list it for. And then my broker would turn around and in the MLS would offer part of the commission that you're paying me to sell your house. We would offer part of that commission to a buyer agent to bring their client to buy your house. And from that, some guy didn't like that. It's been happening for flipping 20 years. And some guy didn't like that and caused a big old stink about it, saying, why should I pay a buyer agent? This is ridiculous. He didn't have a problem paying 6%. The problem that he had was part of that 6% was going to another agent, and he didn't know that. Well, I'm not saying he did or didn't know it. Maybe he didn't know it. Maybe the other agent didn't explain it to him. And then I found out, after doing a lot of research on this, there's only 14 states that actually sign buyer agency with buyers. We were one of them, but apparently Missouri didn't, because that's where this started. But anyway, so in the gray box here, we're gonna talk about broker services and compensation. So the client authorizes the broker to cooperate with brokers who represent buyers. And then you're gonna say yes or no. I would always say yes to this. And we went through this when these laws changed, we had meetings and meetings and meetings trying to decide how our office was gonna deal with this, okay? Because there were so many people freaking out. Oh my God. Buyer agents aren't gonna get paid, and
Yeah.
it just went off the deep end, and it's totally untrue. I haven't had an issue since August, when it all started. So I'm gonna urge your client to initial in the yes box, because we want to cooperate. Me as a seller agent wants to cooperate with that buyer agent, right? We want to put it out on the MLS. We want to make it available because we want to sell your house, right, Mr. Seller? Correct? Okay. So we're going to have them initial in the yes. Compensation to the seller's broker is going to be either a flat fee dollar amount or a percentage. Now, this is where you can say, I'll do it for 2.5. I'll do it for 3. I'll do it for 3.5. That's where it comes that's where it's negotiable, right? And I always tell them I do it for 3, and then we negotiate as need be, depending on offer. But I have marketing, I have all this other stuff I've got to do to help market your house to get it sold. So 3% is what I normally ask. And I don't get any pushback because it looks better than 6, right?
Yeah.
So that's what I do there. C, client authorizes the seller's broker to offer compensation to a buyer's broker. Yes or no? At or up to a percentage of the selling price. So what that line is, it's saying, okay, Mr. Seller, you're paying me 3%, right? If we get an offer on this property, chances are almost 100% that in the purchase agreement, that buyer is going to ask you to pay their buyer agent. Now, how much would you like to offer? Well, I don't want to pay a buyer agent. Okay. Well, here is why it's a good idea to pay a buyer agent. Number one, if they call me and they say, hey, Will, your house on Sycamore, is your guy offering a buyer agent fee? I can tell them yes. If you say no, then I have to tell them no. Chances are they probably won't look at your house.
Yeah.
Because their buyer probably doesn't have the $3,000 or the $9,000 to pay him his commission. So with that said, do you want to offer something? And here's why I say that. I think we should offer something. And in our verbiage here, we say up to. So depending on the offer, if we're listing our house here at 400,000 and you're willing to offer, let's say 2.5, up to 2.5, and then they offer full price. They offer us 400,000 and they ask for 2.5%. Maybe we should give it to them because we're gonna get your house sold. If they come in at 375, well, now maybe we give them 1% or 0.5%, and that buyer can come up with the other part of it, because it's up to that buyer agent to explain to the buyer, hey, you might have to pony up some of the commission. In the event that that seller doesn't pay my fee that we're gonna ask for in the offer, you might have to come up with some of it. Usually I get them to say yes, they'll do up to 2.5. And then we get to negotiate. And then I tell them, I say, you know what, and that's why I really like this new law, because it really opens up our negotiation. It makes it a lot easier to negotiate.
Yeah,
In the old days, we could, you paid me 6% and I offered 3, and it's already stated on the MLS and I'm giving them 3. Well, now they come in and they lowball us
then you're still.
and you're
yeah.
still at the 3.
Yeah, yeah. No, I didn't realize that, because on the test is just like, what's 3% of 200,000 or something?
Yeah.
Okay, there, got it, passed,
Yeah.
you're gone, so.
Yeah, the negotiation, they don't teach you. They don't teach you the negotiation. So, and that's why I tell them, I say, I really like that. So here's what I suggest. We're doing me at 3. We're going up to 2.5. Okay. The next line says the client authorizes the broker to disclose the compensation amount. So the letter C says they authorize me to offer compensation to a buyer agent. But D says to disclose the amount. So we're going to offer it to them, but we're not going to disclose the amount. So we're going to put no there. So we're going to go in the no box on letter D. And the reason is we want them to ask it in the offer. Okay? I don't want them to call and say, "Hey, Will, is your client going to offer compensation? And if it's yes, what are they giving you?" I don't want to tell them. I don't want to say, "Oh, we're giving 2.5." I'm going to wait to see what your offer is, because if your offer is crap, we're not gonna do it, or we're gonna counter offer a dollar amount that is gonna enable them to get their 2.5, right? So that's what we're gonna do there. So again, another layer of negotiation. And that's what I tell my seller, and to make them understand and make them feel like, hey, some of them get kind of juiced. They're like, oh, this is cool. We can kind of, we don't know we're paying them 2.5 yet. It depends on the offer.
Yeah.
And then when they get a really good offer, then they're okay with it. Oh, we just had one today, and it wasn't me, it was another agent. And they had a situation, and they had their seller, they were the seller agent, and they got an offer. And the other agent asked for 3%. And in their listing agreement, they had up to 2.5. So they countered at 2.5. And the other agent countered back and said 3, which is really weird. Usually they'll just take 2.5
Right.
and be good. But this agent countered back at 3%. And our agent was fuming mad. She came in and told me the whole story, told me every detail of the darn deal. And she goes, "What would you do?" And I said, "Did you talk to your client yet?" "No." I wanted to prepare myself and I go, "Well, talk to your client. You know what? Maybe your client would just be so dang happy to get an offer, she's going to pay 3%. And our agent was really mad because this other agent kept countering back at the 3%. And anyway, I talked her into calling her client, going over and seeing, what she wanted to do. And the client goes, just give her the 3%. I just want this thing done. There you go. So my reason for the story is to tell you, we can't get caught up and can't get mad about the other side. And I do it too. I get pissed at other agents and they do stuff and they send emails that are kind of snotty and, text messages and then they get pushy and and I get mad. Get mad. Get mad for 5 minutes. Cool down. Call your client and give them the facts. And that's it. So, I mean, she got her money, or she got, her commission. She's getting her
that hasn't
commission.
been touched.
You know what? The other agent got 3%. That's just the way it is,
Now for their next buyer, they're gonna try for 3.5.
Well, they might, they might. But I guess, just my advice is don't get, advocate for your client, but don't take it personal. Because when you take it really, really personal, it can interfere with what you're doing. There's agents out there that will literally answer for their clients before they even ask their client. A lot of those old school agents, they'll just say no. And it's like, really? Did you ask your client? I mean, maybe they'll take it. No, they're not going to take that. And I know that there's been agents out there that I know they haven't presented the offer. And that's a violation. So anyway. All right. Letter E, I'll get off my soapbox there. Letter E is in the event the agent represents the buyer as a limited agent or an unrepresented buyer. So Savannah lists the property. Savannah brings a buyer that she represents or an unrepresented buyer. So let's say that's the other thing with this new law. It encourages, they think it's going to encourage buyers to go buy real estate without an agent. I don't think so. I don't think it's going to do that. I haven't really seen it. But Savannah gets somebody that calls and says, hey, I'd like to look at your listing. And Savannah's going to say, well, do you have an agent? And they're going to say, no, we're going to do this ourselves. Savannah should just say, okay, that's great. Perfect. As long as there's not an agent, yeah, I can definitely show you the property. I don't represent you. I can write everything up. But keep in mind that I do represent the seller, right? So I can't give you any advice. I can't do any of that. Oh, no, we're fine. We're fine. We understand. In the event you're going to do that, you can put a percentage there that you're going to raise your commission to. So let's say you're doing a 3% and he's offering 2.5%. So that's 5.5%, right? Well, what if you do it for 4.5%? So you're saving your client 1%, right? And if you do it for 4.5%, now you're representing your buyer, doing the paperwork for an unrepresented buyer, and you're making 4.5% on the deal because there's not another agent involved.
It's even better, maybe.
So that kind of takes away from the old days that we used to do. We used to write this in a lot of our agreements, a lot of our listing agreements. we're gonna do it for 6%. In the event agent represents both sides, commission will be 5%. We used to do that a lot. Well, now it's right in there. It's right in the form. And that's nice. You just lay it out. Hey, if there's an unrepresented buyer, or if I happen to represent the other side as well, we're going to do it for 4.5% or whatever. You don't have to always say 4.5. You can say whatever you want. Now, the big issue I've had with, because I sign all these, when other agents do them, I sign them and I look them over and I see a lot of times the 3% and the 3%, say they put 3% in what the seller's getting and offering 3%, and they'll add the two up and they'll put 6% there. You can do that, but the whole reason of that is to give a break or show that you're giving a break for an unrepresented buyer if you're doing the whole thing. So those generally don't add up to equal. Okay. And then F is the transaction fee. And we have a transaction fee. What does it say in yours? 175?
It's just
Or
blank.
it's blank. It's 175 is what our office does. Now, I do 375 because I have an assistant and I pay her a bonus. So I usually just get the bonus from that. There are some agents that do 500. I've seen 500 in there. Whatever you want to add to it, you can surely do that. You get the overage. So, example, I get $200 each time. They take out taxes, but I generally get $200 each time I do a closing because I pay my 175. They take that out. Chris, when he does the bills, takes that out, and then I get the other 200. If it's a VA, so if it's a military loan, not so much a military person on a listing, but a buyer, they cannot pay that fee. So a buyer cannot pay, or a VA buyer cannot pay that fee. And Chris can't charge us either. So you can put a 0. If you're doing a buyer, you put a 0 in there. That's a VA. And I think they got to be getting a VA loan. They can't say, "Oh, I'm a veteran."
Pay cash from
Yeah,
Okay.
they can't do that. It's got to be a VA loan because Chris has got to be able to verify it. He's not going to be chasing people around to see if they're veterans, right? All right. So this next group here is kind of cover your butt statements. The one that you've got to fill out here is B. And B is basically protecting us as an agent. I usually put 90 days in there, but some agents put 180. And what it is, it's protecting, and the same clauses in the buyer agency, it's protecting us from the seller canceling our agreement and turning around and selling it to somebody without representation. So, example, let's use an example. I have it listed. A buddy of his didn't know was being sold, and he saw his house and he goes, "Hey, I didn't know you were selling your house. I'd love to buy that house. Well, let me get rid of my agent here and we'll just do the deal ourselves. That's cool. I'm good with that. You good with that? They fire us and they do it. Well, this clause would make them wait 180 days if you put 180 in there before they did it. So that protects us a little bit. If they fired us because we did a crappy job and they hired another agent, then we can't go back after them. So the only way we can go after them is if they got rid of us and did it on their own.
But that's pretty hard to prove, huh?
It is. That's why I only put 90 days on there. I don't know. I've never had it happen to me. So I suppose once it happens to me,
Then you'll get a little bit.
I'll get a little more serious about it. But yeah. And it obviously happens or they wouldn't have the clause in there, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure David Kaler's had it happen numerous times to him. I know the buyer agency form has the same clause in there. And I know that we have taken people to court and our agent has won. Because they
Just, yeah.
they fire us or they didn't really fire us. That was a different situation. They and the buyers, they signed a year buyer agency. Our agent showed them houses for a couple months. The people said, we're going to take a break. Just, get a hold of us, after summer or whatever the situation was. And the agent ran into him at the store and said, hey, what are you guys doing? I hadn't seen him in a couple months. Hey, we just bought a house. And the agent's going, He came back to the office and he looked it up and said, sure enough, their agency was still active because he did a year.
So if they would have just kept their mouths shut, would have gone under the radar.
Never
Yeah,
know. Would have never known. Anyway, yeah, they could have just said, no, we're not gonna buy.
It's a little hard to know, like, and if you're really that bored that you're, tracking them down.
No, you're not gonna be tracking them, especially if they said, we're not looking anymore. But yeah, and he took him to court and he won because and they had to pay him. I mean, the agent that represented him
Mhm.
got paid.
And then they paid
And
double.
then they had to pay double. Yeah. All right, line 129, earnest money. I usually put in here 100% to the seller, nothing to the listing company. And what that is this is just saying in the event that a deal falls through and our seller gets to keep the earnest money. Say the buyer's backed out, just wanted out of the deal. And they get to keep the earnest money. They'll keep all of it. We're not going to take any of it. Now, you can do what you want. I always do 100% nothing. Because I figure I'm going to be listing it. I'm going to relist it anyway.
Yeah.
So I'll eventually get paid. And, nothing makes a seller more mad if
You
Number
got a
one,
little.
Number
yeah.
one, they just lost a deal because the people got cold feet. And then number two, now you're gonna take half their earnest money.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I I just kind of let it go. Proceeds disbursement, talks about this. Basically what I tell my client is I do a proceeds sheet for you when we get an offer. You're gonna tell me how much you owe on the property. I'm gonna give you a breakdown of all your costs and fees. And I'll let you know what you'll be walking away with at the end of closing. And the title company will do the same. That's how I explain that. Transfer title number 6. This is just saying that Mr. Seller, you're going to be do everything that you can to make sure that you are giving clear title, no liens, no judgments, any of those things that we find will be taken care of before closing or at closing. And you're going to be buying a owner's title policy for the buyer to protect them. And that's standard. Number 7, authorizations. So your client, your seller, is going to initial in the yes or no box in each one of these. I don't know if you were in the sales meeting the other day, and no initial the first top box and draw a line through. That does not count. You know how people do that and draw it all the way down? No, doesn't count. You have to initial each and every box. If every yes box, you're going to do all yes. Every yes box has to be initialed. So you're going to authorize me to advertise it on the MLS, advertise it on computer, social media, place a for sale sign, put a lockbox on. You know, if the old days we used to get mortgage information, utility information, disclose. I like this one. Disclose to other agents if we have another offer. I always tell my client, yes, you need to do that, because now we're in a multiple offer situation and we may make more money. And then permission to change the status on the MLS. That might sound stupid, but if you put something under contract, technically, if you're changing it, you have to ask your client permission. Hey, can I change it? And then if it fell through, then you put it back active. And you can go back and forth numerous times. So by doing this, it gives us free rein to do that. You cannot, and I had this one today as well with another agent. If you put something under contract, you have 24 hours to change the status. And I suggest you change it immediately. So if you get an offer on something that you've accepted an offer, you should drop what you're doing, go on Paragon MLS and change the status to under contract, or under contract taking backups, or right of first refusal, or whatever it is, because you're doing a disservice. A lot of people think, oh, we'll keep it active because we can maybe get another offer, or maybe get a backup offer. If you're an agent and you're showing a property and you had it set up and they get an offer on it and that other agent doesn't call you and tell you, and you show the property, your client's all jacked, you call them up and you say, hey, I'm bringing you an offer. Oh, well, we just got an offer. We just accepted it. You're going to be pissed. I guarantee you, because you probably showed them 6 houses that day, and the one that they like is gone. So that happens, and it happens. So I don't want to be that guy, and I have been that guy. I have forgotten to change it. So just because I tell you not to do it doesn't mean I haven't done it. I've done it. But make sure that you're very conscious about that. All right. Number 8 is personal property. I always just put see bill of sale, because we do a bill of sale. I do a bill of sale when we do a listing, and a bill of sale does what, Savannah?
It's basically when you're like, if certain items are staying in the home, it's like a receipt of what items are staying in the home with the home.
Very good. So it's items like a refrigerator, a stove, a microwave, window coverings, things like that, washer, dryer. Those kind of items you would do if your client is leaving those items. They're generally items that are not attached to the house. So a built-in dishwasher, we probably wouldn't add. I don't add built-in microwaves. If you got a countertop microwave and you're leaving it, yes. But a stove and a fridge, window coverings that can be taken off and on, really easy. Those items I list in a bill of sale, and they are not charged. They're not items that you're going to charge extra for. You're just giving them, right? So those are the items that you would list on a bill of sale. Disclosures. So you're going to complete disclosures, Mr. Seller. We're going to give you a property disclosure that you're going to fill out, and we'll go over that next week. We've got lead-based paint forms that you're going to fill out if your house was built before what year?
1975, 76.
No.
What is it?
Keep going.
19. Is it 70s?
Yes.
73?
No, it's you're going the right direction. 1978.
I knew it was the 70s some point.
You'll be non-discriminating. So Mr. Seller, whoever wants to buy your house, as long as they're qualified, you cannot be discriminating. Modifications to this document. If we change this document in any way, we have to have your signature. If it's a signature that requires both buyer and seller, it's not legal until both parties sign it, right? And you're going to hold us harmless from any claims arising in misrepresentation. That doesn't happen. People want to sue us because of disclosures, they'll drag us into it. So I love that hold harmless thing. That's not even a thing, in my opinion. Other professional services. Hey, I sell your house, Mr. Seller, but if you have questions on mortgages and taxes and accounting and all that kind of stuff, seek legal representation, seek a professional that handles that stuff. I might know a little bit about it, but I'm always gonna maybe answer your question the best of my knowledge, but then I'm gonna say to get the real answer, call your accountant or whatever, right? Other instructions. This is where you're gonna add other things to the document. I mean, if let's say we're listing it or we're signing today, but we're not going on the market for 2 weeks. Property goes on the MLS this date, that kind of a thing. And then we've got the client's signature. They have address in city and state, but if they're living at a different address, then write it down. If not, just keep it blank, and their email addresses too. And then you're going to sign it on line 2226 because you're the agent. And then you're going to send it to one of the brokers to get signed as well. We can do electronic signatures as long I can sign these forms as long as they're no more than a week old. I've been getting a lot of them that people keep them and they don't list it. They don't list it till or put it on the MLS for a month. Well, and then they don't send it to me. I need to sign it right away. If it's older than a week, I have to wet sign it. So if you do send it and it's older than a week, shoot me a text. Hey, I just sent you this. It's older than a week. Can you wet sign it? I don't have a problem wet signing it. It's just because I'll get on there and I'll sign it and then I'll go, oh crap, this is older than a week. and it's gonna get kicked back from compliance. I personally don't care, but compliance will kick it back. And we have a separate compliance company. And they are sticklers. Everything's gotta be filled out. Everything's gotta be initialed. And, we just started them like in April, and they're paying. So we try to keep it where we don't get stuff kicked back anymore. All right, that is listing agreements. Next Wednesday, we're gonna go over property disclosures and the other things that you need to include with your listing. Cause that's a whole nother class. And then we'll be done, and then we'll start over.
Okay. Halfway through,
Yep,
came through. A little bit over halfway.
yep. And we do, I actually, I do a kind of a recap class too, so we got a few more weeks before we start over. And then I'm gonna be gone June 17th to 24th. So I don't know if I'm gonna miss two weeks. I might miss 2 weeks. I almost think the 17th is a Wednesday. For whatever reason, but anyway, so I might drag it out enough to where we start when I get back. To start over when I get back, cause I hate starting and then being gone. Especially if I'm gonna miss 2 weeks, so. All right. Well, feel better.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.